Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to today's Deep Woo episode of Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time. With me today, of course, is Mr. Jay Weidner. You can find his work at jweidner.com and also here on YouTube at Reality Check. Jay, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Excited to have you on. We have a big episode today, and of course, we're going to do some movie decodes, which is right up your alley, Jay. So stay tuned for that. And of course, please join me in welcoming Julie from MaisonJupiter.com here on the web and also here on YouTube at Maison Jupiter. Julie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hello, you two. Hi, Jay. Hi, JC.
Hey.
And hi, everybody watching. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Julie, your voice is a little bit rogue. What's going on?
Well, I was away for a little while. We had a staff retreat, and I kind of had a big purge, a big detox. I think it was initiated by the sun, but also because of, I think it's on some kind of important ley line on the ground. So I stocked up on my favorite stone over there, which is Larimar, which is very much connected to Atlantis. And I think something was going on. So I'm still purging, but I'm going to feel better soon.
Well, of course, we just had this full moon meditation yesterday. And of course, this full moon in Virgo is all about detox and purification. So I think you're right on the money there. That's really cool. Jay, speaking of Atlantis, who was that fellow you mentioned a couple of weeks ago that was doing great work with the Eye of Africa? And do you know anything about this Larimer stone from Atlantis, how that's connected?
No, I don't know that, but he's Bright Insight, I think is his YouTube moniker. And yeah, he didn't find it, but yeah, that's it. And that's the he thinks that's Atlantis. And you say, well, how can Atlantis be in the middle of the Sahara Desert? But he shows that there's been incredible erosion all around this site of literally tons of water that has flowed from the north to the south and then out into the sea right over this thing. And it does look exactly like Plato's description of Atlantis. And so I don't say that is, but the explanation that it's a volcanic dome that collapsed is a little far-fetched. I live in an area where we have many old extinct volcanoes with collapsed domes, and I've never seen any of them that look like that. So I don't know. And, it's very controversial. Like Randall Carlson doesn't think that it is, but he thinks I think the Azores, he thinks when the water levels were lower, the Azores were a lot bigger, and they fit the description of right outside the Pillars of Hercules. And, so I don't know.
And is it possible also, Jay, that Atlantis or those rings that are synonymous with Atlantis are in fact this whole planet, and we live in the inner ring right now inside of the Atlantis ice wall, and then there's all these other continents and rings exterior to what we believe is the limits to our planets?
Could be. A lot of people have gone to Antarctica and they haven't seen any ice walls, but I would say that it's more like the entire planet was Atlantis, and there were outposts. For instance, the Altiplano in Bolivia, Peru, was an outpost. I think this could have been an outpost. And they had, it was a worldwide culture that used etheric energy as their power, and they used architecture to enhance that power. And when they fell out of power, which I believe wasn't very long ago, I believe it was the Renaissance is the time period when the final end of the advanced people happened, and we turned into mechanical culture at that point. And then we couldn't figure out how to work the tools. We forgot how to do it. And so these buildings were just these enormous buildings that are all over the earth, and they have their spires, which are gathering up telluric etheric energy and bringing it down into the architecture, and we don't know how to do it. So we tore them all down. Mostly we tore them down or bombed them. Dresden was full of these buildings and we firebombed Dresden and completely burned down 100,000 incredible buildings, most incredible architecture
There's
on
all
Earth.
these systemic weird fires across the world, almost all at the same time, wiping off the face of the earth a lot of the architecture you're talking about. Anyways, this is one of the maps that I was looking at the other day. Somebody sent this to me in the show, and I thought, oh yeah, kind of looks like it could be Atlantis, but on a bigger scale. Anyways, I wanted to share that with the audience members, and perhaps we could do a whole show in Atlantis and look at the Nostradamus decode with it too, and invite Bright Insight for a segment on the next
Yeah,
show.
you should. That map that you just showed, I would say that, and man, I do believe that you have a point when you say that describes Atlantis. But if you really look at that map and you understand deep esotericism, you know that we live at the very bottom of concentric rings of etheric energy that have creatures in them and humans, that have literally etheric creatures that live in each concentric realm. And as you go outwards from the earth, each realm, like an onion ring, gets more complex. So the closer one is the least complex of the outer realms, according to Emanuel Swedenborg anyway, and a bunch of other mystics. But as you move out, you get, so that what you want to do is when you die, you go up into these concentric rings, your etheric body does. And if you're like a firm believer in establishment religions, you're going to go to that first round. That first round is where you get taught where you went wrong, right? It's not saying that you did what you were doing was wrong, just that, okay, that was a dogma that you got taught, and you're going to have to shed that dogma when you go back. So each realm has a different complexity, spiritual and intellectual complexity. If you get to the ninth one, which is the last one, you hit this, you are shown the way to get out. You are shown the way to be released from the entire thing and move to the next sphere, the next reality, the next dimension, whatever you want to call it. So that, I believe, is actually what is being described in the Plato's description of Atlantis, is these concentric spheres that are around the earth.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating because, Jay, unbeknownst to you here, you just set up the theme for the show today, and it's the on and off world, power structure, and hierarchy. And it's funny you mentioned etheric beings here, not just extraterrestrials. In my last show 2 weeks ago with Lieutenant Colonel retired Ricardo Bossi for the War Correspondent Show, he talked about the off-world component, and he said other things also. We didn't really get into that, but I'll try to get into that topic with him. That's today, guys, at 4 p.m. here on the Rumble Show. Julie, let's set up the interview here for today. Again, the whole topic of having this better understanding of what the power structure looks like on the planet, and as we go above here, the variations and perhaps the latest changes that were foretold by Nostradamus. Set that up for the audience.
Okay, so for today's episode of Nostradamus, I was looking at different quatrains that pertain to his knowledge of extraterrestrial. So Nostradamus was well aware that we had what he called some watchers, and some of those watchers were benevolent. Some other watchers wanted to take control over the earth, so not so much. So he was aware there were different groups involved with the earth. And also he described in many of them the leadership control structure on earth, but also he kind of gave us some hints in order to understand who's controlling this leadership on Earth. So who is involved with this leadership off Earth? So I kind of picked three that were interesting in that department for me, for us today. And also I made some parallels with some movies, which I think that are very relevant for the conversation. So I'm very curious to see what Jay is going to decode about the quatrains, but also the movies.
I am too, so that's really cool. And somebody says, Stardust says, Larimar can only be obtained in one spot on the planet, under the sea, or also in Dominican Republic. Some claim it's part of the sunken Atlantis. Maybe. At any rate, I have my Larimar stone here with me also, and Julie is wearing hers today. So we're going to pull in that energy and see if we can understand here the nature of this realm. Julie, let's start with the first quatrain. I believe it's 487. Let Let me bring that up on the screen for the audience. There you go.
Yes, thank you. So first one, 487. So it goes like this. The son of a king, having learned many languages. I'm going to read it and then go through the decode in the Dolores Cannon's book. So the son of a king, having learned many languages, different from his elder in the kingdom. And then third line, his father-in-law, understanding well the elder son, will cause the main adherent to perish. So first of all, when you go through it, it doesn't really seem like it's talking about ETs. But then with the Dolores Cannon decode book, it says that there's a direct connection to it. So in the book, they say basically that this sort of family structure refers to the power structure on and off Earth, especially off Earth with the ET involved. So it made me remember the movie Dune, where the son of the leader, which is the king, learns a couple of different languages because he's about to get a new, let's say, position in taking control over the planet he's about to being sent to. And there's this whole control dynamic between the family members, but also the different planets. So yeah, this is the newer version of the movie Dune, same concept. And also, I was remembered also of the movie Jupiter Ascending, because in the decode, they're talking about this off-world group dividing the solar system and also the galaxy into different areas of control, and where they dispatch to, let's say, the family member, like, you're going to have control over this area, you're going to have control over that area. So it's kind of also what this movie Jupiter Ascending is about, which I think is very interesting. So let's go back to the quatrain. So yeah, it made me remember both of those movies, Dune and Jupiter Ascending. So, and the second line, it's kind of the son of the king is getting prepared to rule over a new planetary empire. And the last line, will cause the main adherent to perish. For me, it talks about a change in this leadership structure. And also, of course, there's a lot of probably internal politics involved, let's say in controlling different parts of the solar system, and Earth included, and maybe conflicts also between those leaders, members. So let's go through the decode in the book, which I thought was very interesting. So the person channeling Nostradamus says, I'm seeing into another time when we have been studied, when people were coming and infiltrating, and not all of them are benevolent. They come from other times and universes, and they have far greater capacities to use their minds and have studied us and our languages and can infiltrate. These are beings of the skies. Some are benevolent and some want to control. They believe that they were coming here as teachers to be of service and help. And instead of doing this and bringing us to their level, this one, they're talking about a particular ET. This one being came too encouraged by control, because we were so easily controlled and captured through the mind. So basically it talks about having different type of agendas, overseeing Earth. And JC, if you can skip to the other slide, I'm just going to finish reading it, and then I'll ask you for your comments. So the symbolism of relatives is, according to the conversation with Nostradamus by Dolores Cannon, is a symbolism for planetary travel. I see them in their big meeting room looking at this map of various solar systems. They have it divided into different areas of control. As the power progresses, it is divided into parenting areas, just as different levels of family. But as in any family, they have their own agendas. In this meeting room, in one of their airships, they know who has control of which sector, and the power is varied. So I guess in this way, you might compare it to marriages, so different agreements between different people. It takes time to discover the groups that are negative. They are all very adept at using all their brain capacity, but every now and then there is a mutant, and it can take some time to locate them because they cover vast areas.
Fascinating. Jay, your first thoughts on this and how that perhaps relates to the Watchers and the Book of Enoch, and also, for me, anyways, the Abraxas family in the Jupiter Ascending movie by Villeneuve, I think is very interesting. Your first thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, well, I'm reminded of the Mahdi, the prediction from Islam of a great leader that comes. And Frank Herbert was actually writing about Mahdi in Dune. I don't think he was a Muslim or an Islam, but he was fascinated by the religion and the Quran. And interestingly enough, I lived right down the street from the house where he wrote all of the Dune books. And
Wow.
I think that it's amazing because it was a place that has like 200 inches of rain a year. So it's kind of fascinating. This guy's living in this house with 200 inches of rain a year, writing about the desert, right? Like, I want out of here.
Yeah.
You know? But so I think the Mahdi is the prediction of the great leader that's going to come forth from Islam and unite the entire Islamic world right near the end of time. And he's like a throw off of the Hebrew idea of a savior, a Messiah coming that will unite all the people of the earth. Both groups think that the Messiah and the Mahdi are coming now. Now, I think that our religions, especially the main religions, are being controlled by extraterrestrial groups. I think they were invented by extraterrestrial groups. I think it's clear that Muhammad's entire revelation and dealing with the angel Gabriel is some kind of ET encounter. I think that, even Akhenaten had an encounter with a UFO. He was walking down the Nile and the UFO flew over his head and told him to start a new religion. And so he began destroying the Setians, which was the dominant religion at the time, replacing it with the worship of a sun god. And so he sees that there's this constant intervention into our religions by the ETs. And I believe that they probably are planning on some kind of great unifier coming in who will be the son of somebody way high up in it and probably bring death to a lot of people.
Well, in Jupiter Ascending, it's not a son, it's a daughter, apparently, that becomes, I forget what the queen, I think, of the planet here, and she inherits this particular sector. Now, do you, like in the movie here, do you foresee that this savior comes before or after or because of the planned harvest, as is indicated in the Jupiter Ascending movie? Where do you plot that in our current timeline, Jay?
I think that when things get really, really bad, they're going to put up a savior, a false Messiah, who's going to assure us that everything is going to be fine. Stay calm. Don't do anything. Whatever you do, don't do anything. And just stay in your house. Shut up. Help is coming. And it will work because we're going to be so spiritually starved by that point that anyone will be, we probably won't be fooled, but I'm talking about Joe Sixpack and Joan Chardonnay will be, fooled. And I don't think we're far from this period. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen like all darkness is going to descend, because I think that we're unraveling and we're going into the great, the great time of when everybody goes and takes care of themselves, and we don't have the centralized power that we have now, because the centralized power is only working for the ones that are trying to control us. And those systems are breaking down rapidly, actually. Unfortunately, so is the system of justice. So we have to be worried about that. But supply chains and everything is breaking down, and it's all part of the great decentralization that we've talked about before. But because human beings need spirituality no matter what, and when it's denied to them, then they begin fabricating spirituality to anything to fill that gap. And so it's easy to come in as intelligent, look like you're compassionate on the surface manipulator and come in and say, well, you know, this is what's going on and everything. But at the same time, there is also incredible advances that are happening, you know, on a spiritual level, that we're beginning to really understand the universe we live in, and that's happening at concurrent. So I don't believe the Mahdi or the Messiah, or the Antichrist, as the Christians would call the Messiah or the Mahdi, is going to succeed. Actually, I don't think any of this is going to succeed. I think that we're falling into such a great decentralization that only people that are going to succeed are those who know how to create a community and have everybody's needs fulfilled within that community, and then watch the dissolution of the age, which is happening right in front of them.
It very much seems like universe is just bringing us to the edge of despair just for us to wake up and then bounce back, right? And it keeps doing that cycle over and over again. I had a question about Denis Villeneuve while I have you on the screen. You know, similar, Jay, to Gene Roddenberry, he was fed a lot of intel from the naval community to create Star Trek. Do you think Denis has some type of connection to off-worlders also? Because he seems to be tapping into something here that is more than just fantasy and make-believe and sci-fi. It seems transcendent of all of that. What are your thoughts, Jay, on Denis Villeneuve and perhaps his connections?
Well, you know, the more I look into all of this, the more I've concluded that that you're noticed right away, especially nowadays. But if you're a visionary filmmaker, you know, you may not show that you're a visionary filmmaker when you're 10 in school, but they notice other things about you that would lead you to become a great artist or a great scientist or whatever. So I think now that everybody's been shepherded, even if they don't know it, and they're, you know, you kind of look at all of their careers, and it's just kind of amazing the number of coincidences that had to have occurred to get, say, him or Cameron up into the level of filmmaking. Cameron was a truck driver in Orange County for, you know, for 2 years later, he's directing Terminator. What? And so I just think that that's what's going on. And of course, we can look into their backgrounds. We always find that, you know, there's not military, but intel, or somebody in the fam is working for, you know, something. And over we find it. And now it's just become, to me, obvious that these great artists are shepherded and then educated. So yeah, I think probably Stanley Kubrick met the ETs, actually. Steven Spielberg too. You know, and I think that the ET presence is about to be announced within the next less than a year. I believe that they're going to introduce us to the ETs.
I think you're right. I think you're right. We're almost there, and that was also coming up in the Webbot data last year, predicting for perhaps this summer in a big way. Speaking to that too, we talked about this map earlier. There are a lot of people also suggesting that at the United Nations, there is a power structure that would include a voice at the table for perhaps the jinn or some of these other etheric entities that have been here even before us. What's your understanding of that, Jay, and how does that relate to the power structure and the evolution of humanity here in terms of navigating our own trajectory through time, through our own unfettered evolution?
Well, the Emerald Tablet, not the one that came from Thoth, but the one that George Hunt Williamson helped author, came out in the 50s. He was a very interesting guy. That has a passage in there about the jinn or the archons. And it says, you know, we enter into the bodies of your kings and queens, and we take refuge there. And we use glamour as our shield, so you cannot see how we really are. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that we are being ruled by a grace of ETs that is masquerading as us. I can't remember who it was. It was a great story. This woman who is a psychic, she went into a restaurant to get some food, and and she was eating her food, and she looked across the restaurant. She saw these two people in a booth, and she could hear them talking to each other. And they were like, oh, well, what? And one of them was saying, you can't eat your soup with a fork. You have to use a spoon. And the guy, which one is the spoon? And she picked up the spoon, and he go, oh, yeah, that works. Right. All telepathic. And she's getting really freaked out by it. And then the woman, because it's a man and a woman, the woman looks over at the psychic and who's sitting there staring at him with her jaw dropped open. And she hears the woman say, I think that woman can hear us. And he goes, no, they can't hear us. And you're like, no, I think she can. And these stories are all over the place. I mean, what's his name? Jacob, Dr. David Jacob. Is that his name? He talks all about the hybrids that are coming in and moving in.
The regressions, you mean?
Yeah, and they're waiting for this big event. They keep talking about some event that's going to happen, and then that will be when they take it. They take the whole planet. Yeah. And I tend to believe that, to be honest with you.
That conversation you just had at the restaurant, like where people, it kind of reminded me of this movie, They Live, where people, like he's with the glasses, and then your people realize, holy shit, he can see us, and they're calling him for backup on their wristwatches there.
I think it was Cliff High had this story where he knew this guy in Germany. Maybe you know about it, where he owned a big, huge condominium apartment building in Germany, and a guy shows up one day and says, I want to rent the top penthouse suite. He says, well, that's, $10,000 a month, and you have to pay a year in advance. The guy pulls out $120,000 or whatever it was in cash, and nobody heard a noise for the full year that the guy rented the place. Nobody heard anything. He thought that they never came to the apartment or condo or whatever it was. And then at the end of the year, he never saw them. So he went up there and opened up the door, and they'd been living there the whole time. A whole group of people had been living there the whole time and not making a noise. And it's like, and the guy was weird. I remember Cliff said the guy was really strange. So
yeah, there was weird anecdotes about that. Yeah, I'd have to ask him again about that story. That was fascinating. Wow. Okay, Julie, let's go back to this quatrain here and maybe round it out a little bit. What do you think the overall message was that Nostradamus was trying to convey for us in this time to understand about these different levels of hierarchy? How would you, what is your takeaway from that?
My intuitive take on it is that he's foreseeing a change in power. Like the people that are, let's say, in control of the Earth and of the solar system, I feel like he's giving us hints to understand that there is not only, let's say, a power structure on Earth, but also off Earth. And he wants us to understand how it is structured, and also to understand how to free ourselves from this power structure. So that's my feeling. Because of the last line of the quatrain, he's kind of alluding to the fact that some member of this power structure is going to perish. And we're going to see also in the next one, he's also talking about the same type of events that are about to come that are going to change the power structure off Earth.
Speaking of Cliff High, as you were saying, he tweeted something a couple of days ago. He said, in his opinion, we were now in World War IV, not III. He explains why there's another third one in there. And he said, we're now engaged in this fifth generational unrestricted warfare at the same time as into this on-planet, off-planet with ET war. And he says, so it's very, very fucking complicated to understand. And if you're confused, like Ricardo Bossi was saying in our last War Correspondence show, that's okay. You're supposed to be confused because they're trying to confuse you. Of course, in this 5G warfare, it's a battle for the minds here. And part of the reason we're doing these shows, and a big thank you again to you, Jay and Julie, for all this research. We're trying to have a bigger understanding here of our place and all of this. Absolutely.
And if I can, I can just add something to the discussion. 2 days ago, Saturn just changed sign and it entered the sign of Pisces for the next 2 years and a half. And Saturn is kind of the leadership planet. So it talks about where the new leadership is going to go. And I feel like it has a link with what Jay was saying about those new false gurus that were about to enter the scene, because Pisces is all about spirituality. And also it can talk about religion. So I feel like a lot of those new leaders are going to feel like they're integrating more spirituality in what they're saying, or even it could be religious extremes. So I feel a lot of new leaders will come onto the scene and will try to, let's say, scoop people because they're talking about either spirituality or religion. So it will be up to us to really able to discern who are, let's say, leading with their heart and who are not. So I think this is going to be a great lesson.
Okay. Wow. Very good. Fascinating. Thank you so much, Julie, for that. Let me bring up now the second quatrain. It's a 602. And to set this up too, I wanted to share with the audience members the fact that in the last couple of years, we had a lot of ET contactees, remote viewers, and such come to the conclusion, or at least to the opinion, let me put it this way, that the hierarchy of ETs have perhaps left the stage, and we're left now with lower minions infighting. And so this sets up here this 602 Nostradamus, where 7 will be reduced to 3. So let's get into that, Julie.
Yeah, so it goes like this. So the 7 branches will be reduced to 3. So basically, he's talking about the 7 main C word I'm not going to pronounce here, leaders that will be reduced to 3. And it made me remember this Prince song. I don't know if you guys know this song, 7. We're going to get to the
7
lyrics.
is a great song. Yeah.
I love this song. So
Yeah.
Prince is just talking about those 7 leaders that we're going to watch them fall. So we're going to get to the lyrics later on, but it made me remember of that song when I read that quatrain. And then second line, the elder ones will be surprised by death. So basically 4 of them are allegedly going to die, and the elder ones are going to die. So I think he's foreseeing there a change in leadership, but also internal conflicts between those 7. So they don't agree on the agendas, maybe the ideas they have about controlling the earth. And then third line, 2 will be attracted towards fratricidal. So I guess it's murder between the brothers. So strife. So I think it's kind of a big shockwave in this fraternity that we're going to read about in just a second. And the conspirators will die while asleep. So I think it's also talking about some vengeance plans around those 7. So they don't agree on what's going to happen. So some of them murder the other ones. The elder ones are going to die. And the elder one in any type of leadership are the one who imposes structure and the rules and are there to make sure that the tradition is being respected. So if the elders are not there anymore, it means there's a whole new structure that's about to take place. So let me read what Dolores Canning in her book was saying about that. So the person channeling this quatrain was saying, this deals with the future. There are people in power that actually control, you might even say, world history. These people are not the president, not the kings. The controllers are unknown people, and their number will dwindle from 7 to 3. This will be during a time of great chaos in the world. Oh, I'm missing an E here. It will not be a result of 4 dying, but in conjunction with 4 dying. So meaning like the chaos in the world will not be instigated by the 4 dying, but it's going to add to the chaos that's going to happen at the time. So it has something to do with brother killing brother and that power struggle. The 7 are not blood brothers, but symbolic brothers. They are like a fraternity. So I think people here are understanding what he's talking about there. But keep in mind that Nostradamus' writings were written a long time ago. So this fraternity is not well known. It is known by their puppets. So can you go on the next slide? I'm just going to continue reading this.
Yep.
And here he's talking about something interesting. Control is manageable and unmanageable. Circumstances often dictate how much control any individual or group of people can have. To be able to manipulate stock prices, food growth, money, and precious gems, to be able to strangle a market in one area and free flow it in another area is all something that can be controlled. Population, on the other hand, is something that got out of control. And of course, that's what wars and disease are all about, trying to control it. The less to control, the easier to manage.
Huh.
I don't know.
I wonder what you're referring to. I have no idea.
Does it remind you about something?
Yeah, the last couple of years. Okay. I'm not sure where to go with that. So first of all, yes, let's go back to, well, Jay, your first reactions, all of that, of course, how that ties into the last 2-3 years, but also reports that maybe some of these 7 have already gone or left or died. What are your thoughts on that, Jay?
Yeah, I think there is some kind of infighting, Night of the Long Knives going on. And I think it's more than just 4. There's been quite a few odd and strange deaths over the last couple of years. So it wouldn't surprise me that the younger generation is sick and tired of the older generation. It could be, the whole disclosure thing, where the older folks don't want free energy to be released because it affects, their buddies in the oil companies and everywhere. And the younger ones are seeing the planet being destroyed and are saying, why don't you release it? And there is a lot of pressure on the whole subject of free energy, for instance, right now, where people are saying, go arrest me then. I'm going to make the free energy device. You can come arrest me. They can't arrest everybody. It'll be like Spartacus. So they just, that's more or less the feeling right now. So I think that is what's going on. I think the younger ones in the fraternity, the people that run the world, the managers, are also more adept at technology. And so they're able to flit around the internet and everywhere and gather information and everything, where the older ones are kind of stuck in their old ways. And they're trying to show them, hey, there's a different way to do things. And no, we're not going to change. And eventually that happens all the time. So that's how change happens.
And there was an interview maybe 10 years ago now, Jay, and I don't know if you remember this. Kerry Cassidy interviewed a fellow by the name of Cameron Fahely, something like that. This guy was the son of an advisor to Saddam Hussein, I believe, at the time, and he seemed to be very well versed on the banking system and on DET levels. Okay, Julie, talk about number 7 with Prince. I'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
Dogman is attacking.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Jay. Do you think those 7 are on Earth, first of all, and you think they're human or ETs dressing up as humans? What is your take on that?
Well, I mean, what I've learned is that there's 33 levels of masonry, Freemasonry, and then there's 13 levels above that. So I'm tending to think that this might be ET related somehow, that the ETs are, very concerned about what we're doing here. Over and over, when there's contactees, we learn about their concern for how we're screwing everything up. And if they do have bases in the ocean and stuff, then yeah, they've got a big concern if they're going to be breathing all of our polluted water and all of that. So I think that there's, I think actually the murders have already occurred. I think that they've already cleared out the old guard. I think it's just happening recently, within the last year or two. And I think, because there's been so many conflicting orders. Like, they want electric cars, but they don't want to make enough energy to run the electric cars. And, it's like, oh, well, who's thinking this stuff up? Right. Either, so you can see that they're conflicted about what they're doing. And they're giving contradictory orders down to the managers that run the planet. And the managers that run the planet are probably getting pissed off too, because they keep having to hold the bag, like Fauci and everybody else, right? So, there's looks to me like a civil war among the elites is about to occur.
Okay, that's what I was referring to. Cameron Fahely, he did a decode with Kerry Cassidy on the song by Taylor Swift, Bad Blood. And he went through line by line.
She's one of them.
Well, yes. We can get into the East versus West, not which, but what's the theme? Madonna had the role at some point here, and then it was given to Katy Perry, then back to Madonna, and whoever's playing the Madonna part right now, it's absolutely crazy. We could talk about the Super Bowl halftime show here in a second. But going back to this Cameron Fahely thing, I said, yes, at this point, and this, I think it was 10 years ago, he was describing what it appears that Nostradamus was describing now, this huge infighting within the Sea Ward or that group or the Illuminati is what he was talking about, Cameron Faley. Your thoughts on that too, Jay, and tie that into some of the contactees that are also saying that a big quadrant of those really bad, nasty ETs have also left. And this is why now the remaining folks are infighting. I don't know if you said that while I was away, but please add to that if you can.
No, but I think there's something like that happened, right? Because of the infighting, the grand unified front that we've admired for the last 10 centuries, you know, of how can these guys keep this all going and keep everything moving along because they're humans and they're flawed, and how can this be? Well, clearly there's a higher intellectual authority above all that that's keeping it guiding, but something has occurred and it's starting to, the very top of the hierarchy starting to break apart, and it looks like a night of long knives. And I would say that even the WEF had hardly anybody at it at their last conference, and
50%
people are like,
attendance,
no.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of regular people are going, "Why are we taking orders from this old fart?" Right? You know, it's like, right? It's like you can just see that. They're like, "Well, what are we doing?" And then we look at him as, "There will be terrible consequences," you know, like trying to scare everybody, and you know, and I don't think anybody wants any of that anymore. I can just feel the change and see, you know, they're trying to get it back, but it isn't going to work, and it's all part of the great decentralization. So. I believe personally the ETs want us to move into you know, a type 1 civilization. I really do. And but they can't do it. The problem with depopulation is that you lose all of your high technology too, because your high technology is your phone, part of it's being made in Indonesia, part of it's being made in Japan, part of it's being made in the United States, China, and there's, you know, thousands of people involved in making a single phone. Yeah. So the whole idea that you're going to depopulate and keep your high tech is not, no, it's not going to
be feasible.
No.
Let's go back to your interpretation of Carl Schwab, the penetrator. We shall penetrate the cabinet. That guy, the scary old guy behind the curtain. Okay, that was my impression. In The Wizard of Oz, of course, at the end of the show, we realize, it's not an almighty wizard. It's just an old guy with levers, and he's trying, you know, desperately to keep control here. This is what we're seeing now. But the question, Jay, is, who gave the old guy those controls in the first place, right? Where did they go? And so a lot of these contactees are suggesting, some through regression, some through live communication, that some of these ETs have left because they understood or they see ahead of time that they've already lost this quadrant or this battle on Earth, and they're moving on to maybe other targets. Is that your view, your understanding of why perhaps they left, Jay?
Well, I heard from good sources is that the original ETs that made us have kind of faced a galactic rebuke for leaving us to our own devices, and that they are responsible for the mess that we have made. And so they've been ordered to come back and straighten out their mess. And the very first thing they did was kick out all the nasties that were here already. And that job is far from done. And then they got to get to the spiritual nasties, the jinns and the archons, because they're really causing problems. But, you know, I'm optimistic. I really am. I think that there's a new sheriff in town. And I think, by the way, that the disease, the thing that stops the disease, I know this is really crazy, the war in Ukraine and the balloons, the quote unquote balloons that are all over, are all part of the same thing. It's all a plan, a stepped plan. So you have the disease and all the panic and the changing, the destroying of the small businesses and everything. That's part of it, because you want to corporatize. Remember, we're trying to centralize everything on the planet. That's the goal. Right. So you can't have mom and pop doing their own thing. You can't have Joe Farmer without people standing over him. And that's what climate change is about. So we're moving in, but none of this is going to work. Yeah. None of it's going to work. It's a pipe dream by them as they hang on to the age of Pisces, and it's all going to slip through their fingers like water. And but it's painful to watch. It's embarrassing, and it's painful to watch because, watching them make one mistake after another is just painful. That's what we've been watching.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring just one last question here, and I'll get to the song by Prince too, if you have any more decodes on that, Julie. But Jay, in terms of some of these ETs coming back, kicking out the nasty ones, is it your opinion also that there is one part of the human evolution that is helping in that process outside of our atmosphere and perhaps even past our solar system, and that those people, once this all turns over, will also have the role of making sure those fuckers never come back again? Pardon my French. Do you see that as part of at least one portion of the human population being aware and actively fighting at that level as well?
I do. I think that's what's going on. It's a spiritual war, and the ones that are aware of what the enemy looks like and what the enemy does are calling it out. And says we can't really go head to head with it. It's too big and strong for that. So, all you can really do is use kind of a spiritual martial arts and try to use its weight against it. And what it really hates more than anything is to be called out. Like the January 6th tapes. They're not screaming and moaning about what's on the tapes being different from what they were told. That they're screaming and moaning at the people who are releasing the tapes. So that means that we're backing them up into the corner where they're going to have to eventually, they'll never tell you that they're a liar. So they're going to implode spiritually and psychologically. They're going to implode, which will lead probably to their death.
Speaking of imploding, I don't know if you saw this particular clip here of Anderson Cooper. Of course, they're trying to demonize, marginalize Tucker Carlson as being a comedian, as being an entertainer, as opposed to reporter. And how dare he try to rewrite our history? Just go watch this clip. It's absolutely ludicrous. But that's the way they're attacking it. Of course, not with facts and actual evidence, but with slander.
Labels.
Slander. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's basically, who are you going to believe, us or your lying eyes? That's what they're saying.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's a good time to be alive. Julie, any last thoughts here? I don't know if you said this while I was dealing with my dog.
No, I wasn't.
Did you want to add the lyrics?
Yeah, I put the lyrics of the main parts of the song because, it made me remember that song by Prince, which I think is great. So everybody should listen to it. And I highlighted some phrases. So he says at the beginning, in the chorus of the song, all seven, and we'll watch them fall. So that's basically what the song is about, like us wiping out the old leadership, which I think is also correlating with Pluto leaving the sign of a Capricorn. In just a few days, it will enter Aquarius, which is the new leadership, and also us getting rid of, let's say, this slavery structure that have been placed on the planet. So that's kind of what he's talking about. And I feel like he's also talking about this, you can call it this 3D to 5D sort of spiritual ascension, but he's definitely talking about some sort of gain in consciousness that will allow us to liberate ourselves. So they stand in the way of love and we will smoke them all. And then he says, together we'll love through all space and time. So definitely talking about this interconnection and this love chakra that's being highly opened and activated to really get rid of this slavery system that's been enslaving us. And he says, one day all seven will die. So he keeps repeating that the seven will die and we'll watch them fall. And then he's talking, in the verse number 1, I highlighted the mid paragraph. It says, and in the distance, an army's marching feet. So I don't know what you guys think about that one, but definitely like a new that a new day that's about to rise, that's about to allow us to live in the, let's say, 5D in more consciousness. And then the second verse is all about, well, it begins with, and we will see a plague and a river of blood, and every soul will surely die. And every evil soul, sorry, will surely die in spite of their 7 tears, but do not fear. And then there will be a new city with streets of gold. The young so educated, they never grow old. So to me, it really talks about the rebuilding of what we had during Atlantis, which is a longer life expectancy, the return of good technology that will support humanity.
Wow. Jay, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, again, it was what we were talking about earlier. It's that we lost all of the knowledge of how we could work the ether to our advantage. And we can just look back at the old architecture and try to emulate that. And I think that's where we're headed. And that will create, interestingly enough, it's all about superconductivity that you would need to draw down these etheric energies. And gold, of course, a city of gold would be the ultimate etheric generator or power. And that's what gold is all about, because it's has no resistance in it to these energies. And so, yeah, I think I love that song, and I've always thought that he was talking about the end of one age and the beginning of another. And Prince has this quasi Christian Kabbalistic kind of tone to his songs. He's always using numbers, and it's all really very interesting. And I've always been quite fascinated by his songs. And
well, Purple Rain, in my view, also is a big metaphor for the bloodline of Christ. So the color of Jesus and Mary Magdalene having a child, the resulting color was that purple rain. So that song, the lyrics there are fascinating. But Jay, you remember when Prince changed his name into the symbol? Dude, he's talking about the all-seeing eye, the pineal gland. Let's talk about that too, how much this artist has really wakened up the population, even though they don't know yet. It's like he was ahead of his time, first of all. Musically speaking, he was way ahead of his time. But even in the message he was communicating through song and through the lyrics, talk about the all-seeing eye and how that ties in here to this great awakening process.
And the frequency of the music too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just tell you a little story.
Okay.
I know a guy,
I love the J-Time story. Go ahead.
I know a guy who knew Prince, and he went to his house, and he had my book in his bookcase. And he said, "Have you read this book?" And he goes, "Yes." And then he called me up as soon as he got out of the house. Like, my God, Prince got your book in the library. I'm like, whoa. I got all freaked out. Cool. But he said his library was astonishing. It was an astonishing library of books that were thousands of dollars, all ancient books going back into Egypt. And Prince was completely into all of this stuff. And he would take 3 weeks to compose a song, so that it had all of the structure of the song, had all the Kabbalistic things in the right order. So if you understood Kabbalah, you can understand exactly what Prince is trying to unravel for you. And over, it's about how there's these dark forces and we have to stand up against them. And if you understand how to read the background lyrics of of his songs. So Prince is one of my favorites. And I actually think he faked his death, to be honest with you. I think
it was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that. Even now at this point, there seems to be a lot of evidence to support that theory. Wow. Okay. We could probably do a whole show on Prince. Cool. Actually, that would be fascinating. Go ahead.
Because you can't get out. See, that's the thing. Once you get into that area, that circle, you can't get out. And you can hear Prince is screaming out, I don't want to be in this thing, I want out, and then you just reach that point where I'm out. That's it.
That's the way to do it. Julie, do we have time? We're at 53 minutes. We can go into overtime. We had one more decode. Jay, you have a little bit more time?
Yeah,
let's do it. Okay, Julie, let's set up here Nostradamus Quatrain 507.
Okay, so so this one is about some very interesting discovery that apparently is just about to be made. So we'll look at the decode right after from Dolores Cannon. So the quatrain goes, the bones of the triumvir. So I hope I'm pronouncing this right. This seems to be a ET group according to the decode. So the bones of the triumvir will be found by those searching for a deep and enigmatic treasure. So, according to the decode, the triumvir is a ET civilization. So, people would discover the remnants of those ET bodies. And this deep and enigmatic treasure, apparently, according to the decode, refers to some information on our star origins. So we'll look at this. Those around will not be peaceful. So that means they're spirits, call them spirits if you want, protecting the treasure to make sure only the right people with the right frequency can find it. So I was remembered of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Is that the movie title? Yeah. So kind of like a portal or something that's very not, you cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but there's something protecting this very ancient knowledge that's there. So, and last line, this hollowing of marble and metallic lead. So according to the decode, it refers to a stargate or an energetic shield that's around the stargate. So let's look at the other slide. So, according to the Dolores Cannon book on that quatrain, it says, this quatrain pertains to some of the secrets not yet discovered in Egypt. The unfriendlies around the treasures are spirits that are there to discern, to make sure those who found the treasure are the people who are supposed to find it. I'm thinking this is some kind of energetic shield. I'm seeing what looks like a door with an electric aura, but it can only be opened by someone who has the knowledge to open it. It will be documents. These documents pertain to star charts, maps of galaxies, so information about the cosmos that we're not presently aware of. And then the triumvir. So from the decode, it says there are from the planet Zolar or planetary system Zolar, are the people who put this information there that sealed their tomb. The information was hidden by these people and it was part of their life. A part of their mission was to conceal this in such a way that they would be buried with it and sealed up. They came to Earth with this information. They checked in on us for a long time.
Wow. Let me bring up Graham Hancock's Twitter feed because there's just a new discovery now in Egypt. Let's see if I can bring that up. But first, Jay, your reactions on us discovering something here that could have some type of an energetic gate, maybe preventing us from finding it or discovering it until such time as we are at that pivotal moment for humanity. Speak to that first.
Well, the pyramid texts from the hieroglyphs, they talk about how there's a box that's hidden somewhere. And this box, and remember, Egypt is filled with these gigantic granite boxes down underneath the pyramids and stuff. We don't know what they are. They look like residence chambers of some kind, but how they got built and moved there, I mean, there's just like, how can you explain this? But the pyramid text say there's a box that will teach you, has a map in it that will teach you where the secret chambers of the building of Tahuti is. And we're pretty sure that that's the pyramid complex. And in that you will find all the secrets of time, right? So I believe that somewhere in the Great Pyramid is a Stargate, and that what's his name? The guy that says that the pyramid is a gigantic plasma generating device. Forget his name, the scientist. Yeah. But anyway, I believe that's exactly right. And what they were doing was they were generating enough electricity to power the Stargate. Okay, we know that when they were at the beginning of World War II, they were building ships in the shipyards, and they had to build them fast because they were at war. So they started using what they call arc welders, which was a capacitor that would fill up with tons of electricity, and then the guy would turn it on. It'd be so hot that you could melt the sheets of metal together really fast. And what would happen is stuff started missing, hammers and screwdrivers and drills, and they thought that the workers were stealing them. So they started searching the workers at night as they were leaving, and they weren't stealing them. So then they set out watchers, and these high energy electromagnetic fields literally made metal objects disappear, completely disappear. And that was the beginning of us understanding what a Stargate is and how to reconstruct them. But the Egyptians already knew all this, which is how they gathered all their knowledge. They took the Stargates out into the universe and met everybody, all the alien species. And that's why everything in Egypt is so weird, because they were in touch with all of these other beings.
Whoa.
Walt in the chat is saying, "Where's James Spader and Kurt Russell when you need him?" Yeah, I remember that movie when I was a kid. That was good. Thank you, Walt. I appreciate that. Going back to this new discovery here, Graham Hancock posted this a couple of days ago on March 2nd, this hidden passage discovery in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, that's interesting. I believe Nostradamus also talked about this, but Edgar Casey for sure, that we would find another a cache of documents that would change the history of the planet, but this would be underneath the Sphinx, not necessarily in the pyramid. What are your thoughts on that, Jay? Are we looking more perhaps with respect to the quatrain here of Nostradamus under the Sphinx, or perhaps something leading to what was just found now in the Great Pyramid?
You have to understand that the whole complex is sitting on top. It's like it's sitting on top of a building. Okay.
Right.
And that building's covered with sand. We can't see it. Okay. So if you went down in there, you would think the hallways were tunnels, but they aren't. There's just the hallways of a building covered with sand. And when I was at the Sphinx with the History Channel, I got my very beautiful assistant to divert the guards that were watching us. And I was right down in the Sphinx complex. And while she was flirting with the two Egyptian guards who just loved her, I went around the back of the Sphinx, and I found a piece of plywood, 4x8 plywood with a bunch of rocks on it. So I took the rocks off and I moved the plywood, and there was a tunnel with a ladder going right down into the darkness. I got a rock, I dropped it, and I waited to hear, and I never heard it hit. I didn't want to get arrested, so I put the plywood back and the rocks back. And but they're definitely excavating underneath the Sphinx. I guarantee it. They're excavating everywhere. They probably have already found the box, the granite box they're looking for that has everything in it, probably inscribed inside the box, not in paper or anything.
Right.
They're running around everywhere underneath there now with finding all the technologies that have been put there and buried there. And it's all being run by the occult areas of the intelligence agencies. Remember, the intelligence agencies are occult, and occult are the intelligence agencies. John D., Queen Elizabeth's astrologer, communicated completely in code so that she would understand what he was saying in the letters, and only she would understand what was in the letters that he was writing back. So he would be saying, "Oh, there's 100, beautiful stars in the sky floating over the Caspian Sea." And to her, it was, "There's 100 ships coming to England from the Caspian Sea. You better get ready." Right. So in case the letter got intercepted. So occult, intelligence are all the same. And that's why they all kind of fuzz together. So even Nostradamus was considered an intelligence agent, but he's also considered an occultist. Just like Aleister Crowley was an intelligence agent and an occultist, and on and on and on.
Do you think? Oh, go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
Sorry. Do you think, Jay, the documents that Nostradamus is talking about in the quatrains could be like blueprints of how to build a Stargate, basically?
Yeah, I do. Although if they could just lead them to it, then we could back engineer it. But again, I think all they're really doing is they're taking conductive metal, probably gold, and they're building it into a circle, and they're zapping huge amounts of electricity into that, creating this core that literally tears a hole in the time-space continuum. And you can travel and go places, and probably it may actually have a map of where to go once you have the Stargate, right? Which places to go to which place. So it's just a frequency. You hit the frequency of the planet you want to go to, and boom, you're there instantly.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up. It's a little bit, I guess, controversial to some extent, but it's in the context of perhaps also interviewing Graham Hancock on his new Netflix series. But in this clip, this is a few years ago, Zahi Hawass was at a conference, at the same conference as Graham, and he had this huge meltdown about even sharing the stage, or even ideas, or sharing ideas about the origins of the pyramids. I won't play the clip here for the other people, but it's very hard to watch. I mean, it's very hard to watch. And I wonder, is this not just vitriol, but fear and anger coming out of Zahi Hawass? That's how you can describe it watching the videos. You guys can go watch it. Is that because he is read in and he knows that if this comes out, his life is at risk, his family's life is at risk? That seems to me the energy he's putting out there in that video. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. He gets all over Graham for Graham pointing out that, the ruins in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, are only 200 miles away from the pyramids. Like, that's a completely different country. And you're like, dude, thousands of years ago, there was no country lines. So that was a 200-mile horse ride from the pyramids. And there's a connection to it, the whole thing. And, we survived the Younger Dryas. The comet hit or the super wave, whatever caused the Younger Dryas to happen 12,900 years ago. Then we had a solar flare, which ended the Younger Dryas about 11,700 years ago. And the remnant population who suffered through this incredible 1,500-year-long event were freaked. They were freaked. And, the temperatures even all the way down to the equator had dropped really low. So they began creating monuments to preserve the knowledge that they had of the pre-catastrophic civilization. And both Göbekli Tepe and the pyramids and a lot of other stuff are that attempt to preserve that knowledge.
And it's funny because just after this series on Netflix with Graham Hancock, of course, Zahi Hawass now is on tour doing a conference in North America, and it's kind of like funny that they're out there debunking and doing everything they can, just like we saw Anderson Cooper freaking out on CNN there.
Well, the thing is that Zahi Hawass was his education was paid for by the what's his name, the Psychic Foundation, the ARE, out in Virginia. Yeah, what's his name? David Wilcock is the reincarnation of him. I can't remember who it is. Edgar Casey.
Edgar Casey. Yeah.
He's not really the reincarnation. Yeah.
No. I know he said that in a video.
Yeah. So what is the ARE, Edgar Casey Foundation, financing Mark Lerner's education, Zahi Hawass's education? And why are these the guys that are guarding the secret that, we all know is under there? And Edgar Casey himself said that they're going to find all of this stuff, yet the people that his foundation funded are now the leaders of the establishment position. It's very strange.
Very strange.
Well, here in the advertisement, he's described as the world's most famous archaeologist. I would suggest that maybe Graham will take that title. He should take that title anytime soon. Julie, anything else on the quadrant? Anything else you want to share on this one before we go?
No, I just wanted to say it looks to me like there's a witch hunt in the scientific community. So
Okay. Oh my God, we're already there at the end of the show. It's so much fun when you guys are on. Jay, let me bring up your YouTube channel here for the audience members. If you guys are watching this on BeyondMystic, please mosey on over to Reality Check there and click subscribe. Try to get some more subscribers up there. Jay is doing some great videos and great content. What's coming up in terms of interview? Any new guests coming on, Jay? Anything else you want to point the attention to the audience?
Yeah, I've got to play a show. There's this guy who lives in Malibu, in Marina Del Rey. You may have seen him on the Leak Project. Anyway, he started videotaping.
The custodian? The custodian?
Yeah, the custodian. So I have
Yeah.
a huge interview, and I've gone through all of his footage. I'm going to prove that they're not insects, that there's no way an insect could fly that fast. Besides, insects zigzag. They don't go in a straight line. And I'm going to debunk everything. And he's found proof that there are 2,000 mile an hour objects flying around in our skies that we can't see. And then, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the Blue Angel video? So he took a video off of YouTube, which is sitting behind the pilot on a Blue Angel, right? So you see the pilot's helmet, right? And it's going at 30 frames a second. And in 4 seconds, a portal opens up in front of the Blue Angel in the sky. I swear to God, this all happened in 4 frames. It's 30 frames a second. So that's what? 1/10 of a second? Less than a 1/10 of a second. All right. A portal opens up and 2 objects zoom out and they ping the radar on the Blue Angel's ship. So there's these objects that are flying around. It's just amazing. It's the story of the story. And it didn't just happen here. A guy named Trevor Constable was photographing these guys back in the 60s. Right, these same exact objects. They have plasma rings around them, and it's like some highly advanced plasma technology way ahead of us. Could not be our military.
Well, you just mentioned in the 60s, Cliff High's dad, when he was in Vietnam, they were testing these new night vision goggles, but in the red spectrum, and their soldiers started shooting out in what seemed to be empty airspace, and everybody's saying, "What's going on?" They were seeing what they believed were dragons, and this
flying
is what,
monsters.
Yeah,
and they were seeing these guys.
Yeah, so this is what they were talking about. You can go check it out on League Project there.
So just let me quickly explain what's going on here. This is what he's done. Is this whole event took place in each one of these is a frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably another one there. 7 frames at 60 frames a second. He's shooting. So that's really fast. Okay, and so what he did was he then took the little clip of the object that he saw, and then he sandwiched each frame together so you could see its flight path. Quite brilliant, actually. And so to me, this is the biggest breakthrough in years. This is proof that, and apparently people like in Munich are finding them in the skies, and they harass any object that's flying over 150 feet. They don't harass them. They fly in, kind of check them out, and then fly away. So there's some kind of recon of some kind.
It's like they tag them. He mentions like they're tagging them with something.
They're tagging them.
Yeah. So have you already done the interview, but you haven't uploaded it? When could people?
No, I had a tragedy. I had a computer malfunction. I lost the interview, and I'm too afraid to ask him to give me another hour. It was a really good interview, though. But I have the footage, so I'm going to go over the footage like what you just showed. But I have the actual footage and kind of debunk the debunkers, you might say.
Oh, cool. So that, of course, is on Reality Check on YouTube. And of course, you can find Julie here on Maison Jupiter. Give her a like there too and subscribe. We're trying to get her over 10,000 subscribers. Julie's creating more and more unique content there, including the Astro Decodes with Megs and also the Pick-a cards with her lovely sister Sophie. So you want to check that out. And what I wanted to say about this video too, if I recall, Bruce Sees All. He also has this really cool telescope set up, and he captures a lot of stuff on the moon. But 2-3 months ago, he captured what exactly looks like with that little fin tail that moves, but the other guy was capturing too in his frame. And he's coming back on the show tomorrow, guys, at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to ask him about that clip too. So stay tuned for that and watch that. Jay, any last words for the audience members? Like, things are getting crazier and crazier on one hand, but on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of positive change there too. And it's hard sometimes to find the balance between looking at all this war talk, but also realizing that we are in a spiritual war, we're spiritual beings, and we are eternal. What is your message here for the audience members before we go, Jay?
Absolutely. Do not be worried about nuclear war. It's not going to happen, period. Not going to happen. So all the saber rattling in the world and all the talk about nuclear war, there's not going to be any nuclear bombs going off. And if one does go off, it's a fake. I don't know how they would do it, but it's a fake. And it'll go off and nobody will record any radiation outbursts. And everybody will go, what's going on? And then they'll say, oh, well, the explosion pushed all the radiation out. It'll be something like that. But there's not going to be any nuclear bombs. That's all just a big ruse to get us all worried and be fearful and all of that. And you can tell that there's not going to be, because if Putin had it, he'd be using it at this point. With all the things that NATO is doing to him, he would nuke Kiev if he could, and he can't, because there's other reasons why. I just know that we don't have anything to worry about.
Okay, very good. Julie, any last thoughts and words of encouragement for the audience before we go?
Yeah, look, end of the month of March, Pluto is going to change sign into Aquarius. So I think this is going to be the bringer of a lot of change for all of us. And as Gosha was saying on her channel Cosmic Agency when she did the Pluto decode, her ETs were kind of telling her that Pluto transits, it's more, let's say, negatively felt for the members that are not on the right side of things. So for us in general, is going to liberate a lot of our structures. First of all, Aquarius deals with technology. So I think it's going to liberate a lot of the scientific community, like we were just saying about Graham and all the hardships he went through to get his information out there. And also Aquarius, another team, is ETs. So I think there's going to be a lot of disclosure, a lot of information coming about ETs, maybe not from, let's say, our current authorities, but I think there will be a lot more ET contacts. That's my personal intuition. So I think a lot of information about our starseed's origins also is about to come in, and I'm very excited for that.
Okay, very good. And for those who are having trouble, Julie, with all the fear porn in the last couple of weeks and need to detox, maybe, what do you have for them here on BeyondMystic.Academy with Elena here in her beautiful singing bowls?
Yeah, so yesterday we had the amazing full moon meditation, and we do this singing bowl full moon activation every month. And this one was very, very powerful. So it was for the Virgo full moon, so detox, purification of the physical body. I'm currently experiencing it, as you can see, with my voice. So it was a powerful, powerful activation. And also we went through a lot of past lives during the activation. That, let's say, us that are doing some spiritual work in past lives, it was very dangerous to do so. So we're all liberating ourselves from those traumas of, let's say, speaking out about what we know, speaking out about spirituality. So I think this is a very important one. And it's also available in replay, of course.
All right, so folks, that's BeyondMystic.Academy. And of course, if you want to have a little bit more information on how all of this crazy stuff is affecting us and this crazy spiritual warfare that we find ourselves in, please join me at 4 o'clock Eastern, so in about 30 minutes from now on my Rumble channel. Janine and Recorder Bosi will be joining us here for a segment and analysis of this fifth generational warfare we find ourselves in. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic. I love you guys. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe here on the YouTube channel. And of course, this was the Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time with Mr. Jay Weidner and Julie from Maison Chipta. I love you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Yeah.